All right, so we have Ryan Stewman here, the funnel closer, as he has on his T-shirt, the hardcore closer, and all that he does. And appreciate you being here and being a guest today. So thank you.
Yeah, you know what? It's always a pleasure to hang out with you, Nate. Whether we're on a podcast or a phone call, we just talked on the phone a few days ago, and not to derail the show just right from the beginning, but you have no idea what happened to me after I got off the phone with you guys. And I think this is like an appropriate show, probably inappropriate, but appropriate show to share this on, just because I was literally on the phone with you and Satima.
Yeah.
And I was I was at the Marriott in La Jolla. And so nice place, you know what I mean? Upscale, hotel for over there. And I am sitting away from the bar, away from everything, totally off in a corner by myself. and I had just taken my AirPod out from talking to you guys. And this lady comes in, like I have to do it like this. She just comes in and she like slides up in the rolling chair, like how are you doing? Right? And again, I'm not being disrespectful, but I'm not Prince Charming, but I was definitely out of this lady's league, right? And she probably weighed twice as much what I weigh and twice as old as I am. And she sat a pack of Virginia Slims, like if that kind of puts it into perspective.
You know she means business when she puts a Virginia Slims down.
Man, the Virginia Slim women don't play, right? And they're very rarely slim. And so anyway, and they're like, oh, I've just smoked diet cigarettes. That's how I'm going to go on the diet, right? And so anyway, she proceeded to tell me her whole life story without me even saying hello, And I don't know, California marijuana's legal, so maybe she could have gotten stoned because she wasn't from there. She was from Pennsylvania. Maybe she was stoned is why she was telling me all that, and I wasn't trying to hear that anyway because I don't smoke, and so I was just trying to go inside, and then I got derailed for 2.5 hours, man, 2.5 hours, all because I'm a nice guy and I don't want to be rude, you know what I mean? I don't want to just but so about that time, I was like, well, I got to go, I got work to do, and it's like only 7:30 or something like that at this point. I think we talked at 5:30, and I'm still there at 7:30, right? And she goes, before I leave, you got to see this. And I'm like, all right. And she goes, look, it's on my phone. And I'm like, please don't let it be naked pictures. Please, dear God, I do not want to see this woman naked. And she goes, I have a Trump doll. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome, right? And I thought, you just have a Trump doll. It's like, that's cool. You know what I mean? You like the president. Whether you like him or not, that's not up for debate. But I thought she liked him. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool, right? And she goes, look, I torture it every day. And she's showing me, these pictures were for 600 freaking days. Every day this dude's been in office, she's driven a nail between his legs. She's poked his eyes out, done all this weird, and then taken pictures of it and put it on social media and stuff, man. And I'm like, but that's not weird. You know what I mean? Hey, I get it. Maybe you don't like the president, but that's a little over the top. I'm just saying, to try to turn him into a voodoo pincushion, you know what I'm saying? But whatever, to each his own. And then she asked me a few questions, and I was like, well, why don't you like him? And then we kind of went back and forth. And then at the end, she's like, wait, do you like him? And I was like, I don't know. He's doing a good job. And I don't want to argue with her, right? Clearly, I like the guy, but I don't want to argue with her or anything. And she goes, well, what do you think I should do to my doll today? I was like, you should probably give it a hug and tell him thank you. Dude, she was fuming.
I can imagine.
She was like, you should go. And I was like, well, I wasn't going to stay for very much longer anyway, right? Dude, that happened to me. As soon as I hung up the phone, she did it Miley Cyrus on a wrecking ball, dude. Totally detoured me from, dude, I couldn't even, I like to eat alone because, I might be chewing. I'm like, dude, it was chaos, man. So
that is crazy. I actually
it's your fault, Nate. It's your fault. That happened because of you.
That's interesting. We can play that into leadership here because obviously as a leader, people want to be around you. You attract people, and sometimes it's not necessarily the people that we want around us. But that's an incredible story. Yeah, I remember seeing your post. It must have been the next day, and I was laughing when I was reading through that. And I was like, "Wow, that is interesting."
It's a little over the top.
Yeah. Well, let's. Yeah. So you're a leader. You're clearly a leader inside of your life and what you do and what you've built, and definitely get into that. But when you hear the word or the phrase championship leadership, what comes to mind for you?
Honestly, Bill Belichick. If there was one person I could, signify for like championship leadership, it would be him because he's consistently done it over and over and over again, and he's somebody who has led other leaders to championship because like Tom Brady, he's a leader, apparently, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like obviously rather like he's a leader. And so you've got, and so that's a funny thing though. Oftentimes people think because they're a leader, they don't have to have other leaders, right? But really, we're always leading on three levels. We have somebody leading us, we're leading other people, and we're being leading the people on the same level with us too. Oftentimes, we may not think of a leader when we have people on the same level with us, but we're leading them in one way or another. They're leading us in another way, and so a championship leader, he's the first thing that comes to mind because he personifies that. And, somebody who has been through the championship and knows what it takes to lead people to get there, I think that's important. And the other is somebody who has led champions. There's probably they've got, is it 4 or 6 rings that they've picked up? A lot. I know
They have 5. Yeah.
I think they're tied with the Cowboys for Super Bowl ring. If not, they have one more. So, but the Cowboys have done that with 10 different coaches. Right. You know what I mean? Whereas this guy has consistently within the last decade said every other year it's ours.
Yeah.
And so really that phrase, he is the person that comes to mind.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I mean, yeah, you think about it and not to get off on the NFL, but in today's day and age in the NFL, it's with free agency and everything else that they deal with, like to see what they've done is incredible. And it's one thing to do it once, right? It's like one thing to run into a hot streak with a hot team and the right guys and the right core and to get it done once, which is impressive. But yeah, to do it over the last almost 20 years, 5 times, been there 8, championship leadership right there. I was reading John Maxwell, one of his books. He did a newer version on one of his original leadership books, and they defined leadership on one of the guys inside of there defined leadership as basically the ability to get people to follow you. And so when I read that, like I thought of you, I'll be honest, because I mean, look at the followers that you have inside of what you built, inside of all the groups on social media. And like, I'll allow you to get to that and share some of that, but it's really impressive. And you have to be a leader in order to get that many people that had no clue who in the hell you were to follow you. So maybe talk a little bit about how you built that, or, I'd love to hear your story and where you came from to what got you to where you are today. And then we can just kind of continue to touch on the leadership conversation throughout that.
Well, I'll start the story in 2010. So we'll like flash forward across a bunch of stuff that right? But bottom line, in 2010, I was a mortgage person up until March. And a lot of people were mortgage people up until 2010, and then they dropped out really until 2008. And I was actually still thriving because I felt like I was leading people to make the best choice possible for their home finances, right? And a few years back, about 5 years back, I had got in trouble for having some guns that I shouldn't have had. And the federal government took over the licensing process. Like up until this point, you could get a state license to be a loan officer, and it was no big deal. And then the feds took it over. And because I had these guns within the last few years, the Fed said, until you've been 7 years past your date, we can't allow you to do this anymore. There really wasn't anything I could do other than go to work for like Bank of America type of place. And I couldn't work somewhere where you were just a number and I didn't have any pull. I just couldn't do it, And so, at the time I didn't feel much like a leader. I felt more like a loser. But I knew that there was something to this social media thing because I had been making money from it. In 2009, I made, right at about $300,000. And while people were literally committing suicide and divorcing and losing their houses. And I mean, most everybody that's in your age bracket, my age bracket is in our audience here, remembers that time. It wasn't that long ago, it was less than 10 years ago. And history's due to repeat itself. It's probably going to happen again, soon, depending on maybe who the next president is or how these elections go with the House and Congress, because that's ultimately what matters in the economy, right? And I just wasn't sure what to do, but I knew that I had had some success in the mortgage business on social media. And I was just talking on another interview that I did about certainty. And certainty comes from experience. So I had experience making a lot of money from social media in the mortgage business. And so I was certain I could get other people to do that too. And so that's how it started. And I managed social media for a few people in 2010, 2011. Like, you know, say you wanted me to write, I actually wrote for people on social media for $100 a month, Nate. Get Ryan Stewman to write your Facebook posts and post them. I logged in as you and everything, and answered your direct messages, all that for $100 a month, right? And I gained a massive amount of experience because I had about 70 clients. It was 500 to sign up, and then $100 a month for me to manage it. Wow. And after I got to about 73 or 74 clients, I was like, man, you know what? Sure miss those guns because I'd like to blow my head off because this is like a lot of work, you know? And so, but I gained a lifetime of experience. And so I thought, well, I'll just teach it to real estate agents and loan officers because that's primarily who my clients were anyway. And so I started doing that. And I took a stand, you know, with most people, whether they championship leadership level or not, or just a leader, period. A leader is somebody who takes a stand. And there's two types of leaders. There's natural born leaders and situational leaders. I was a situational leader. I was thrown into a situation where I had to lead people because I felt like I just had this calling on my life that I needed to be dedicated to helping people understand that social media was the next big thing. And that, you know, the old school ways of doing things like cold calling, door knocking, sending out flyers, email was even dying and still is, right? Like I was just at Frank Kern's house last week and he's like, dude, email's dying. And in 2 or 3 years, it's going to be dead. So we've got to figure out how we can work an interactive list on social media. And so I took this stand, and a lot of people would say things like, oh man, you know, social media, that's for like my friends and family. That doesn't make any sense. How are you going to make any money from that? But I was certain because I had done it, right? I had personally made money from social media. So I was certain about it. And so, you know, I just kept on and kind of agitating the market, right? And that's kind of how I got the name Hardcore Closer, because people are like, dude, this guy's hardcore. He just will not give up with this message about how he can make money doing this stuff. But I stuck to it. And then after one testimonial and another testimonial and then another person, and then all of a sudden somebody becomes a millionaire from my stuff, and then another person becomes a millionaire from my stuff, and people start paying attention. It's like, maybe this Steuben guy is not an idiot after all, because he keeps having all these success stories and people keep talking about how he's changed their life and everything else. And so, you know, I got to a point though where I had 5,000 friends on Facebook, and it took me about 3 years to get there. It wasn't something that happened overnight. And I had to work really hard at it. And I said, man, I'm maxing out this stuff. The algorithm keeps changing. What could I do? And so I started running Facebook ads. And again, just like starting to teach Facebook before anybody else did, I started running ads when nobody else was really running ads. And then it was nice because there's lots of people running ads right now, which means my ad spend's really expensive. But at the time, it was really nice, man. And we built a huge list and a huge following running ads on like $250 a day. Nowadays, that doesn't really get you much on Facebook. But back then, you know, that was like, we were the number one spenders at the time out there because nobody else was competing with us. So they were showing our ad to everybody. And I'm a polarizing, you know, not so much these days, but back then I was a very polarizing person. And it was like you were either on our team or against us. One of the 48 laws of power is us versus them, right? And so I created this, like, we're hardcore closers. You guys go work down in HR because you shouldn't be in sales in the first place, kind of a stance. Well, like the champions, right, the top producing salespeople, they identified with that mindset. So they started, you know, I became the people that were terrible at sales. I became their biggest enemy. But the people who were good at sales, the people who owned a business or who sold their way up into owning a business, they absolutely loved me because they're like, this guy's talking about the experience that I went through. The only way that you learn that is by actually doing it yourself, right? And so I failed like anybody else. You know, I created a few fan pages that didn't work, and I finally created one that stuck, and we run ads to it, and it really grew. I created a few Facebook groups that didn't ever really catch any traction, but now I've got 5 that are very big in their niche. I have the biggest small business group on Facebook. I have the largest sales professional group on Facebook, like people that are in sales. It's like almost 80,000 people, and they're real. We've got like 20,000 people blocked. And we admin that pretty hard, as you know, Nate.
Yep.
And we have some of the biggest paid groups on Facebook where you got to pay to be a member as well. And it's all from just having these experiences and being certain that I can help these people. But, you know, I look back and if you were to consider me, and I'm not saying I am, but if you were to consider me for a candidate for championship leadership, I have had over 11,000 paying clients, and I have given 55 refunds. And the way that I got there is because I always do what I say I'm going to do no matter what, sometimes even to the detriment of my own time or my own finances. But I have just lived by that. One thing I think champions do is what they say. If a champion tells you he's going to win the Super Bowl, he's going to win the Super Bowl. If Michael Jordan, who's definitely a champion leader, if he told you he was going to go out there and score 50 points in the game, he scored 50 points in the game. If he told you he was going to wear 5 rings or 6 rings, he went out there and he made that happen. And I follow that mantra the same way. It's like, hey, if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to actually do it and deliver. And so now I've got to a point to where I'm not as agitating as I used to be, because I don't have to convince people to my way of thinking, because now a lot of other people help convince, like Gary Vee, Tai Lopez, Grant Cardone, Tony Robbins, those kind of people have really helped do the convincing for themselves, so they know that it works. Which just to take a step back, it's always amazing to me the amount of people who say, you know, man, I really admire what Tai Lopez and Grant Cardone and Gary Vee's doing on social media, but they won't do it for themselves, right? That's the opposite, I think, of a champion. And they have excuses. You know, they'll say things like, well, those guys are a walking, living reality show. Well, you know what? Like, to make $4 million a month to be a walking, living reality show, sign me up for that. You know, I don't make $4 million a month, but we make close to 7 figures a month, and you have to be a walking, talking reality show, because the world that we live in, the social media world, is driven by someone saying, not necessarily saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, but getting the attention of look at me, look at me, look at me, and people choosing their leaders. And so I've been fortunate enough to be a leader in the sales community. You know, I've been at this longer than most people online, not everybody, but most of them online and on the social media world. I was fortunate to be able to jump into that early. And I changed as a leader. I changed the way that the sales training world works. I like Grant Cardone a lot, but that guy wore suits and ties and was dressed to the nines and did seminars and everything else. And, you know, 4 or 5 years after watching me and you know, taking a good chunk of the marketplace for myself, you know, the other day he was talking about getting tattoos. The guy has the same haircut that I have now. The guy has the same beard outline. And again, you know, imitation is flattery.
That's respect, man.
But he's wearing T-shirts, and he's, hey, brother, and he's dropping F-bombs and all this other stuff that I've known to do. I'm just not out of respect for your show, right? But like, you know, these things that I'm known to do. But in the beginning, guys like him and even him were saying, man, you got to have to put a suit on, man. You're going to have to not talk about the things you're talking about, man. You're going to have to stop cussing. And now flash forward, and they're doing that, you know. And so because they've watched the success that I've had just for being real. Because when I stepped into this, I said, if I'm going to be a leader, I got to lead the right people. And in every sales cubicle, every sales floor that I've been on, the people there didn't like wearing suits. If they could wait, and they all had tattoos, and they all cuss like sailors, and they weren't in church on Sunday. They were typically at a strip club buffet on Sunday during church hours. And I said, so because sales is a stressful job, you need a release, you know what I mean? And most of them have been divorced. Most of them have done some kind of, you know, shady hustle before they found the legitimate road to sales and everything else. And I said, there's a lot more of those people than there is people that are the feel good, go to church, wear a suit and tie in the sales world. And I said, I'm going to appeal to those people. And I just became, like, you know, for lack of a better phrase, the Lord of the Flies to those people, because a lot of them are super successful. They just, you know, that they just didn't fit the mold of what Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy and the old school guys were teaching. And I thought, man, there's all these old school guys that are awesome, but I want to be a guy that brings change for the future. And now I see somebody on Instagram every other day that's a startup sales trainer that looks like me. And a lot of people go, everybody's trying to be like me, but I'm totally flattered, because I'm like, I changed this whole situation, and it feels awesome, because I bet you those people know who I am and said, hey, what, this is the guy. I may not have to go as far left and be hardcore like him, but, you know, he's gotten his group to accept him with tattoos and a foul mouth and a checkered past and everything else. And so, man, you know what? I can go out there and do it too. And so it's actually, you know, a big part of leadership is inspiring other people to become leaders as well. And I think I'm doing that on every level. And dude, it's a good feeling. It helps me sleep well at night. It also pumps me up to wake up early in the morning.
Yeah, you are a championship level leader, no question. When I first found out about you and started following you, when you started to lead me, and you didn't even know it, was 2015. And I remember like seeing you take off. Like, I think you had already had a lot of things in place, right? Obviously, but really like in the last few years, I don't know, would you agree? Like you've really, the rise has gone more vertical than horizontal. And
Yeah, for
it's
sure.
just,
That first million was not easy. That first
yeah,
million in a year was not easy. But once I got it, then I had the resources and the funds to be able to really take this thing off, which has been the last 3.5 years.
yeah. So, you know, leadership, I don't know, it might even be one of these terms that feels overplayed a little bit. Like it was kind of big in the 2000s and seems to have kind of lost its steam a little bit. But do you know, it's not something that I necessarily think of, like, do I believe I'm a leader? Yeah, absolutely, 100%. But do I spend a lot of time thinking about it, or how I'm going to lead my people, or how I'm going to lead the groups or my team? Like I've seen, you're a leader in like phone sites, clicks out, like new ideas, innovation. You're a leader in creating a massive following. You're a leader in the fact, like you said, that you don't give a shit who is watching or what they think. Like there's more of you out there than people want to admit to or talk about. And so you, from a very early time, like you've clearly conducted yourself as a leader. But when did you truly start to think of yourself as one?
So I'm about to probably blow your mind. You may already know this, but for those that know both of us that are watching, I really realized I was a leader in church. And oh no, wait, this guy went to church, right? And I did. There was a period of my life for about 10 years where I helped not only serve in a church, but I helped build extensions of the church. I helped raise money for the church. And I was all in. If I do anything, I'm all in, right? And I just got a little too busy and things went wrong and my belief system changed a little bit. So I'm no longer involved in it. But it was a great point in my life. But the church was a big John Maxwell following church. Matter of fact, he would come and speak to the church about once a year because the pastor was one of his, like, you know, mastermind students or whatever you want to call it, right? And so we were assigned as what they call the servant leaders, right? So like if we worked at the church, we weren't called employees, we were called servant leaders. And every month the pastor would assign us to read a book. And you couldn't lead on the level that I was leading on in that church without these books, right? And so I started off on like the parking lot team where I'm like leading people to come in and we're apart. Then I moved up to being like an usher where I'm leading people. And then I moved into like the finance team where I'm leading people to tithe and all that stuff, right? And so I realized I was a leader because here I was just like this mortgage guy who's making a couple $100,000 a year. And I'm leading these millionaires and they're coming to me and saying, hey, how can we do this? And they're coming to me and saying, we want to set up this business and do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, man, you know, there's really something to following the stuff in these books. You mentioned John Maxwell's revamped his book. I read Leadership 360. Maybe that's the book you're talking about that he revamped. But, you know, I read Leadership 360, which was an amazing book through that church. And I realized one day, sitting there in a circle, and one of the guys who was totally not a leader, he's like, well, I'm a leader. You know, that's what I do. I lead people. And I realized that everybody else there wouldn't really call themselves a leader. And you kind of mentioned this too. You know, we don't sit around and thinking like, oh, I'm a leader, I'm a leader, I'm a leader, I'm a leader, I'm a leader. You know, it just happens because, you know, we're offering, like, you have a passion because you know you can help people have a better life, right? I've seen it happen. You've seen it happen. You're wearing a Manuel shirt right there. That's part of the process for you making it happen. I'm wearing a Funnel Closer shirt. That's part of the process for me to make it happen. But I don't call myself the leader of the Closer Nation. I'm a member of it. I just happen to be the leader. It's implied, but I'm a member of it. You know, if people ask me, you know, well, what would you say you are? Like, leader's not in the description. You know, matter of fact, my person that writes bios for me, my editor, she put that. She's like, Ryan Stewart is a leader. I'm like, don't put that in there, because leaders don't really tell themselves that they really don't identify themselves as a leader. You know, like if you ask Michael Jordan, who's the best basketball player of all time, he's probably not going to say himself, even though he is. He's probably going to be like, well, you know, if you look back, Dr. J was really good. You know, Wilt Chamberlain was even better. They were dealing with different times than I was. He's a leading scorer. Then you got Kobe Bryant, who did this, that. He's probably not going to say himself. He might. I don't know. I never met the dude, but I highly doubt it, because most leaders actually want to support somebody else. And that's what makes us a leader, because that's what a leader's technically doing, is supporting other people, right?
Yeah.
And so I realized that in church, it's like, oh, I got these leadership qualities. And then working at the car wash a little bit before that, I became a manager. And one of the things, the guy that trained me on switching from worker to manager, he's like, you never say I did this. You never say I did this. I cleaned the cars. I run the car wash. I, you know, made this decision. You say we. It's always a we thing, because it's a team thing from this point. You're just the quarterback, the leader of the team. And so, because I don't really play a lot of sports in school, but I grabbed that concept quickly. It's like, it's not I washed 1,000 cars this Saturday. We washed 1,000 cars this Saturday. You know, and it wasn't when someone damaged the car, it was like, you damaged the car. It was like, our operations damaged the car. So I learned to like look at everything as a team point. And since I looked at it that way, they all looked at me and said, this is our leader. We're all part of his team. You know, same here in my office. I don't sit out and go, listen to me because I'm the boss, right? Listen to me because I'm your leader. When we have a meeting like we had earlier today with my team here, the whole concept is, hey, we're in this together. Let me lead you to the place that's going to get you the most sales and give you the most money and satisfaction in the easiest operation process.
Yeah, that's incredible. Like you said, a few things. Number one, I did not think you were going to go to church when you talked about realizing that you at first were a leader. But that's awesome. And then number two, you know, the guy that whenever someone has to say they're a leader, they're not a freaking leader, right? Like if you got to announce, stand up and tell the room that you are a leader, 9 times out of 10, you're not really a leader. You want to be, but you are not. And then, yeah, which kind of really just plays in, even going back to your car wash days, like that's really intuitive. What you said was, you know, just to like know, because a lot of guys in your position would say I, like, look at how many upsells I had, look at how far I've led the team to, or whatever that is for you inside of the car wash business, versus a we in a team, and just the realization at that age and that place in life where you were at to know that. Like, so you talked about a little bit about natural leaders, and that's really a natural inherent thing that you have inside of you, obviously. Where have you always seen that side of you inside of your life? You know, because I've read your books, right? I mean, and followed your story, you know, car wash, rough upbringing, didn't graduate from school, correct?
Yep.
And, you know, got into the drug business. That led to some issues, went to prison a few different times for a few different reasons. And all along, like, and you've owned it. You've owned it all. Even when, like, the gun deal, right? Like, very easy to say, like, woe is me, man. That it was not my fault. Like, but yet inside of that, you've owned it, right? Like a leader would own it and take true responsibility for it,
yep.
Whether it's your fault or not. And just to see how that's played out inside of your life, like, yeah, can you talk to that? I mean, it's really something that you don't find in very many people.
Well, I think everything rises and falls on leadership, right? Like empires have been built and been crumbled into pieces based on leaders. We've watched countries come up and be strong, and then the leader ruin it for them. We've watched, you know, municipalities have poor leadership, in like Flint, Michigan, have poor leadership and then crumble. You know, we've watched cities like Chicago have poor leadership and go from being one of the best places in America to live to one of the most dangerous, violent death traps on the planet due to poor leadership, right? And those people there wouldn't blame it on themselves. They wouldn't take the responsibility. They'd say, oh, it's the hood rats and the south side of Chicago that are causing this problem in our city, not us. But it's their leadership skills that ultimately are in charge of cleaning that portion of their city up. In business, a lot of people will blame their employees or their sales staff for their shortcomings, their short months, or their failures or whatever. And I realized that a true leader is a person that's responsible. But here's the downside for being a responsible person. When you're responsible, those that are on your team will put the responsibility back on you. That's why I say everything rises and falls on leadership. And when you're a leader and you know that whether things go good or they go bad, you're going to have to take the credit for it. Right now, whether you like him or not, Donald Trump is the president of the United States. If the economy is going good right now, he's getting to say that he's responsible for this awesome economy. If it crashes in 2 years and he's still the president, then he's also going to have to say what he did to be irresponsible and cause it to fall apart after it had been going good for a little while. We'll see. We don't know his level yet, but as a good leader, that's what he's going to have to do. Hey, I made these mistakes with China, and we're working to fix them to get our economy back on. So what I'm saying is, when it's something that leadership does, it's an I thing. I messed up. I dropped the ball. You guys are part of this team, and we're going to make this happen together, but I'm the one taking responsibility. However, when you are a responsible person, people will dump responsibility and blame on you, right? As a leader, let's go back to the president because that's the easiest example. If something goes wrong, he's going to be the first person that everybody in America blames. You know what I mean? Like, we get in one little tiff with somebody or something doesn't go right, he's going to be the first one that they blame, right? Because that's what leaders do. They take the responsibility. Like, a good leader will tell you that they're responsible for it. A bad leader will try to, avoid responsibility and point it at somewhere else. And that's how you know the difference between a real leader and someone who's like full of crap, right? But I know that as a responsible person, people are going to dump responsibility on me. And people are going to point to me because they know I'm responsible. So there's lots of irresponsible people in the world, and they'll point their blame at you because they know that you can handle the responsibility, and that's one of the downsides to it. But I've been dealing with that my entire life. So it's just become like another pillar in my life. It's like, hey, I'm very responsible, and I am a leader, and I've obviously led in companies. I've led in innovation. I lead a lot. I lead other leaders. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not just thinking, I'm like, I guess I am a championship leader because I have champions that I lead. There's tons of millionaires that are in my program, like you guys, you know what I mean? Oh, yeah. that are part of our deal. And you've come through twice. Tim has come through twice as well, and over the years. And so that's my job. But if one of those guys fails, it's also my responsibility, whether they want to take it or not. I know that everything rises and falls on leadership, which means leadership is the ultimate holder of responsibility. And in good times, that's an easy job. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, Nate's killing it, man. It's totally because of me, right? And in bad times, it's like Nate's crashing is totally because of me. I've got to help him. And I noticed that at a mid-20s, at a relatively young age. And I've always just lived by that ology. And, even as a kid and stuff like that, I was leading the kids in the block into doing, less than above board stuff. It's like a lot of teenage boys are that way. You know what I mean? Yeah. Beating gun wars and shooting fireworks off in August in the middle of the neighborhood, that were left over from July 4th and all those things. And ultimately things that were even more illegal because, leaders push the envelope, you know what I mean? So, but one thing one thing I will say though, is that people can tell. Because even though I have a past that should disqualify me from being able to do anything other than receive Social Security and Medicare benefits, people see this quality in me, and they're like, you know what? I'm willing to put his past aside because he's willing to take responsibility for things that I don't see other people doing. And as well as I do, because you've been around for a long time with me, even since back when you sold insurance, is there's been a lot of people come and go. In our industry, a lot of people pop up real quick and everything's awesome until a few things go wrong, and then they run and they cower and they hide and they don't take responsibility in the internet. or the community or the industry that they're in just runs them clear out of town like they're Salem witches, you know? One thing I've always thought is like, man, when things go wrong, I just need to step up twice as hard so it doesn't happen to me.
Yeah, I love it. It's like, Jocko Willink, right? Extreme ownership.
Great
like,
dude. Yep. Extreme ownership. Yep.
Ownership. And that's what you're talking about, which I love. The powerful distinction for me is like when things aren't going well, it's you as a leader, it's all about like I failed. I didn't do it. Whether it's your child. And then we go back to like when things are good, it's got to be we. Like it's not I. Like, and that can be a hard thing for a lot of people because they want to take the accolades and the recognition. And so 100% championship leadership, man, to have that distinction and to know like it's I when we lose the Super Bowl. It's we when we won it.
Yep.
And that's powerful.
I bet there's been plenty of times where Tom Brady's had to go into the locker room after they lost the Super Bowl and say, man, I dropped the ball. Literally, I dropped the ball.
Yeah.
I saw this guy coming. I couldn't shake him. It's not your fault. We're going to go back and win it again next year. And because of that, the rest of the team goes, dude, he's our leader. Sign him back up. And there's even a story where he took a salary cut so they could bring more talent into the team. Those are the things that leaders do so they can sacrifice to win down the road, you know?
Yeah, and this just goes to you. I mean, like, bring it back to you. You've owned everything. You've owned it. And that's why you have the following you do. That's why you are the leader you are. So I know we don't have all day. I wish we did because we could continue this conversation for a long time. But not that you have anything to hide, not that you are hiding anything, but what is a moment that, like, we could talk about the success and the road there, but was there ever a moment where even though you are the leader that you are, even though you are who you are, like, was there ever a time where you're like, of strong question of like, is this really what I should be doing? Is there a moment that sticks out your head where you obviously as a leader, you made the decision like, no, this is not going to stop me. I'm going to continue to go on. But it was like, there was a moment. Was there that moment for you where you had to take that stand?
I'll never forget. It was 2005. And I had built up a nice real estate empire. And I've put this so many times together in my head, Nate, so the story sounds a lot more articulated than it did, 14 years ago. But there was this time in 2005 when the police raided my house. They thought I was selling drugs. I was not selling drugs, but I had a history of selling drugs. So as a leader, I own that. And when they kicked in my house, there was no drugs. There wasn't even Ziploc bags. There was no scale. There was none of the things that you would associate as if I'd flushed it all or whatever. Hell, I wasn't even in town. And they arrested me for a gun that wasn't even mine. It was my stepdad's. And he's not a leader and he's not responsible. And so therefore, instead of him saying, hey, that was mine, I ended up taking the charge for it. It was a gun that you're not supposed to have in the United States of America. At the time, you can have them now. But at the time, there was this Brady bill, and it was like you couldn't have these certain guns. In Texas, they don't care if you have them. I actually bought the gun from a police officer. Or he actually bought the gun from a police officer. But so in Texas, you can have this gun, but federally you can't. So it's almost like marijuana in California. I just came back from California. Everybody's smoking pot everywhere. It's totally legal. But if the DEA decides they want to raid your dispensary, it's still federally illegal, right? Yeah. So I got the ATF involved, right? Or I didn't, but the ATF got involved. And, I thought, well, I've been doing all this stuff and I've been doing it the right way. I built a huge real estate empire. I mean, in 2005, I made $770,000. And that's something very few people, get close to cracking $1 million a year in real estate. And then here I am, like, having this, like, boom, this horrible moment. Flash forward 2 years, I've lost my house. I didn't lose it. I had to sell it. But, I mean, I lost my dream house. I had to sell it. I finally get sentenced to 15 months in prison. And my wife, who I was a leader for the family and everything else, like 2 or 3 weeks into prison, sends me a divorce letter. And I only got 15 months. So it wasn't like I was going to be gone for a long time. It's like, I'm just going to take a little 11-month break. That's about how it was actually 13 months federal time. And then it was 15 months, but I did 13 on a 15-month. Then you go to the halfway house and get a little bit of good time, right? You got to do about 85% of your sentence. And so there was a time when I was sitting in there and I was like, how did I get here, man? You know, I was minding the rules. I didn't know, ignorance of the law is not an excuse, but I didn't know that that gun was illegal. I knew the guy that my stepdad bought it from, so it never would I thought a cop was going to do anything like that. He wasn't the one that set us up. Like I said, they were looking for something totally different. I bought it from a cop in a different part of the Metroplex or whatever. And then I lose the woman that I love, and you know, I'm in a rough place, prison, even though federal prison's not so bad actually, but you know, it's still prison, you know what I mean? I still don't have my freedom. And, you know, I had a lot of time to sit in there and reflect on, you know, how did I get myself in this situation? You know, what did I do? I didn't say, how did the cops raid my place? That's terrible. They're terrible people. I said, what are the steps that I trace back to do this? And I said, well, I can see now because I was working from home and I might have 2 or 3 people stop by during the day to pay me rent to drive beat up cars. And then later on in the day, 2 or 3 real estate agents stopped by to drop off contracts because we didn't have faxes and all that stuff wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And so there was probably a lot of mixed traffic that looks like some drug stuff going on there. And I said, okay, well, so that's my responsibility. I realized what I was doing. I should have had an office in all reality. I had so much traffic that I should have had an office, you know. And I thought, well, what did I do to lose my wife? I thought we had a great relationship. Well, first of all, I wasn't minding my P's and Q's, and I got put up in prison, even though I didn't know that that gun was illegal. You know, the truth is I had it. She didn't sign up to marry a convict. She signed up to marry a successful mortgage guy. And the other truth was I didn't pay her a lot of attention because I was so busy working and making $700 grand a year versus, you know, actually being and showing up for my family. You and I know that's part of the 4 pillars, right? And I'm like, you know, after I think about it, like, again, as a person that takes responsibility, I can't really blame her. And, you know, there was a low point. But once I discovered those things and I took self-inventory and ultimately self-responsibility, I said, man, you know what? When I get out, I'm going to change all of those things. I'm not going to change me and who I am as a core and who I am as a person, but I'm going to change these things. My next relationship, I'm going to show up for it, right? My next job, I'm going to work in an office. The next time I see a cop, I'm not going to act all nervous and everything. I'm going to own the situation. I'm going to get out. I'm going to be a model citizen. I'm going to, like, the parole office is going to love visiting with me for the next 3 years. They're going to like coming by my house. I ended up doing a refinance for the parole officer. I ended up doing a refinance for the drug guy that drug tests you. Like, I ended up, like, you know, ultimately coming out of that smelling pretty good, man. But it was because I believe I took inventory while I was in there. I watched a lot of people go, well, Nate snitched on me, and then he banged my old lady, and then she conspired with these cops, and then she got in trouble and they like always blaming everybody else. Whereas I sat in there and I said, how can I fix? I'm obviously broken at the core. How can I fix what I've done in this situation to assure that it doesn't happen again? And, you know, it's probably, it's definitely the lowest point in my life, walking out 10 years ago. So it's July 16th. So July 11th, 2008. So like barely a week. And so 5 days, 10 years and 5 days ago, I walked out of the gates of federal prison with $25 in my name because my ex-wife took everything. And a friend of mine sent me some letters from prison that I wrote her the other day. And one of them I wrote from the halfway house. And I was like, I can't believe that I went down to our storage facility and I don't even have underwear or socks. I literally left with nothing. But I believe because I had taken that responsibility and that self-inventory in there, that I turned around and was able to get out. And I own that stuff, right? I'm not sitting here saying it was this problem or that problem. I'm sitting here saying, man, you know what? I realized I had all these people coming over and I didn't think the cops were going to think I was selling dope, but it makes sense because I had a past history of doing that. You know, I'm not sitting here going, she cheated on me and left me and took all my money because she's a horrible person. I'm sitting here going, you know what, dude, I was so focused on work, man, she may have been doing that the whole time and I didn't know, you know? And so, and again, I'm not saying anything bad about her or the cops or those people, because as a leader, I know that that's my responsibility is what ultimately landed me there. And it's ultimately what's kept my ass out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's incredible. I can imagine for every one of you that has a story like that, like it's probably at least 99 others that are playing the woe is me card, right? And
probably 99,000.
99,000. Yeah. Yeah. So that's incredible. And yeah, that's a leader. That's a leader right there to take that into 10 years, you know, it's kind of seems like a long time, but it's not, right? It's just not a long time. And to see where you've come from, like no socks, no underwear. I think you said $25 to your name, and in a halfway house to, you know, the penthouse and beyond. You just bought your dream house, right?
Yeah, but I live in a freaking castle, bro. Like with a turret, everything's huge. There's rooms I haven't even seen in this place, you know. And I moved there yesterday, and you know, I drove a McLaren to work today. I just got a text message before we hopped on here that my Wraith is ready, which is a Rolls-Royce vehicle that they've been preparing for me for the last month and a half. You know, it takes a while. You can't just go in and get a Rolls-Royce. It's like they got to find one and build it and all that other stuff, right? It takes like 6 months to build one. And so, I mean, I've got 3 boys. I mean, the wife that left me, she was cute. You know, I peep her Facebook every now and then. She's not so cute anymore. But my wife now is a 10. There is no man on the planet that wouldn't be like, man, I would trade whatever I got for her. Because not just she's beautiful in a 10, but man, her personality is something else, dude. She's the type of lady where when I'm like, you know what, Nate stole money from me, I'm going to go get the boys together and we're going to kill him. She's like, baby, you know what, you can go do that, but then what are we going to do? And you know that that's not really what you want, and you're smarter than that. And she's not someone that's like amping me up to do bad things. But then again, when someone takes advantage of me and I let them make it, she's like, listen, honey, you got to go out there and you got to do X, Y, Z protocol the right way. I mean, I have a dream woman, you know, but I learned from experience what I did and didn't want, you know, and dude, I wake up every day. Today was a little different because I didn't know where all the light switches were in the house. It was a little frustrating this morning because it's new territory. But man, I wake up every day on cloud 9, and that's not some rainbows and unicorn stuff. Like I even embrace the struggle because I know it's going to make me better.
Yeah, I love it. Well, you mean, hey, your wife is the amazing person that she is. It's like, you know, strong leaders, championship leaders surround themselves with amazing people that will help them and know them and maybe even keep them from making poor decisions and having the good counsel. So that is great. I want to wrap it up here real quick. Do you have any, you know, and what you're building and where you're going? Like I've seen, like your vision is huge, like way bigger than a lot of us out there. What do you have in store for yourself where do you see as a leader, what do you really need? You know, because we talked about it now, about surrounding yourself with other people and primarily, I would imagine, other leaders, right? So real quick, can you touch on just the vision of where because I have a feeling that you haven't even, like, you feel you're just getting started.
I do, man. You know, first thing is, you know, I have a big goal for 20 years from now. And, you know, I want to change things like with phonesites.com. I want to change the way that people interact on the internet and build sales funnels. You know, with Clixo, I want to change the way people search for social media profiles, right? And these things are way ahead of their time, but in time, they will be the thing that makes everything happen. And, you know, my ultimate goal is to look back one day and have created more millionaires than I can count. And not because it's all about the money, but because millionaires create other millionaires, and they create employees, they create opportunities. And I'm just looking at things on a bigger level, you know? And like right now, I just logged in to set up the next stream for a Push to Excellence group. And it says that my live streaming has been terminated due to violating stuff. And I'm like, dude, I haven't done a live stream in a long time, so I'm not sure what I violated, but these are the struggles that I face now. And I'm like, I got to go figure out what I did wrong to go in here and fix this thing now. So always something, man.
That's great. That's a great way to close it up. Yeah. So you touched on it. You touched on Phone Sites, Clixo. Yeah. What do you want the audience to know about? How can they find you? Where can they go?
Well, I'm all over social media. You can find me mostly Hardcore Closer. And, but you know, one thing I would encourage are people that watch this, like if you struggle making sales funnels and you're looking for more leads and all that stuff, go check out phonesites.com. Literally with zero experience, zero tech training, your 90-year-old grandmother, your 10-year-old son can create a sales funnel from your mobile device in 5 minutes, man. It really is that easy. And like, data is king. It's the most valuable resource on the planet right now. And so with data being king, it's more valuable than oil You need to get to creating leads. And the easiest way to generate leads is by using phone sites. So go check it out. There's a demo video over at phonesites.com. And if you want a 7-day free trial, you can go to trial.phonesites.com.
All right. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll make sure we get all that in the show notes as well. And just, thank you. Thank you for what you do and for the people that you help. And thank you for your time here today.
Yeah. Thank you, Nate. I really appreciate you having me on here, man.